Hello and welcome to episode 38 of the FPL podcast by Fantasy Football Hub, now rebranded as you can see as the Green Arrow as we look ahead to game week 10. My name is Andrew and a good evening to my co-host Adam Hopcroft. Adam, what colour was your arrow in game week 9?
You know the answer to that. It's deliberate. I wanted to set myself up so I can get more green arrows whilst we're podcasting. So
I'm sure, yeah. So we've been podcasting together now for about a year. I think it's nearly a year to the day.
Yeah, it must be.
And we're in episode 38. We've had 38 game weeks of action, and it's actually the first time since we started that I've been ranked above you. How is that for irony or karma or whatever you want to call it?
So technically, you've beat me in our podcast season of 38 game weeks. Yeah, it's what it is. It's a marathon, not a sprint. So we'll see what happens at the end of the season.
We will indeed. What do you think of the Bruno debacle? I saw you put out quite an angry tweet on a Saturday evening.
Wasn't angry from me. Let me put it into context. I wasn't watching the game. I thought, do you know what? I don't have Bruno, so the worst thing I can do is watch the game, hoping for him not to score. So I watch a film with the wife. So we're watching The People versus Larry Flint. Really good film from the 90s. I thought, I'm not going to check my phone throughout the whole part. So the wife goes to get a drink, and I thought I'll quickly have a look at the score. And it was brilliant because literally it showed up on SofaScore, penalty miss for Fernandez. I'm like, this cannot get any better. Threw the phone down by the sofa. I'm not touching it again, And my wife was probably wondering why I was nice to her for the rest of the evening. At the end of the film, check the score, put on BT Sport, and then I'm just seeing the penalties being rerun, and it's just like the jam of Bruno owners. I mean, you're a captainer as well. Just like I can't get over it. But I think the reality is, and I think they were talking the penalty shouldn't have been given because it was a foul in the build-up. But the reality is that Bruno wasn't lucky. He deserved to get at least 11. I think 11 points is about right for his performance, the amount of chances he created. So I think it could have been worse, got away with one, but it was just the fact that I saw that penalty miss and I was laughing at all of the Bruno owners. Yes, I nearly brought him in, but didn't.
I had one of those. Anyway. I had one of those moments because I captained FPL. I captained him in like Sky, and I captained him in all the different formats. And when it was saved, I had one of those moments, just your weekend's ruined. You're just like, oh my goodness, minus points all over the shop. But obviously, what happened. So I have to ask you. So those who don't know Adam, so Adam's a massive Villa fan, and I need to ask you, and I ask this with the greatest respect, Adam, as you know.
Yeah.
But do you think that the fact that, in my eyes anyway, that this was probably the first game week, maybe since FPL has started as a game, that a Villa option was a potential candidate for captaincy. Do you think that swayed you above, was it heart over head, basically, or not? Or do you still think it was a good decision?
No, I don't think so. I think there was a bit of bad luck. And I think the big thing that happened is Barkley got injured in the first minute and brought Traore on, and as a consequence of that, it affected where Grealish played. It affected our high press because Traore couldn't press, and offered a different solution to Barkley. So for me, it was just bad luck, but it just had to happen in the first minute because the way Grealish and Barkley were linking up and how Brighton have been defended, I think there were definitely points there to be had for Grealish. He's probably unlucky to come away with nothing. I think he created a few things, a couple of decent chances for Watkins and Mings. So, it's the way it goes. I'm not going to be captain of Villa player ever again, though. And it's not. And the reason is, yeah, exactly. It's that emotional. It's that emotional side of it. It's just too much. I don't want to have the pressure of captain of Villa player again. So, not for me anymore, I'm afraid.
I promise I won't mention Red Arrow or Grealish or anything for the rest of the show. I promise. I'll try and promise anyway. Okay, so as we are live, please feel free, everyone, to join in the chat at any time. Let us know your thoughts on the topics throughout the relevant sections, and feel free to ask any questions in the chat at all. Good evening to FPL Geordie, Geo Boys, Mr. A, Subra Chakravorty, Geo Boys, Owen Johnson, James Hardin, Liam Dorian, the current Sky champion, James Hardin, Michael Svedin.
You listen to everyone in the chat.
I'm listening to everyone all the way down. No.
All 20.
Only what I can see at the moment. Yeah. For any new watchers and listeners, if you haven't subscribed just yet, please press the subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen and set the alerts so you don't miss out on live streams, which from now on will be 8 p.m. every Wednesday right here on this channel. Also, please press the like button if you enjoy our content. So with the wealth of premium attacking options now available to us, our Twitter followers have asked us to talk about which ones we should have in our teams. We can't have them all, and there are some decisions to be made there. Adam's weekly topic of choice is how do we get over a bad start to our FPL season, which is particularly prevalent for some after this game week. We will reveal our game week 10 teams and plans. Look at the best captaincy options for Game Week 10. We have a competition giveaway you won't want to miss. And finally, we'll take a look at the top of our podcast mini league. So thank you so much, everyone, for all the questions we had on Twitter. We had questions off at the FPL_T. Which strategy looks best? Drop Kane for Vardy, captain him and hold before switching back, or keep Kane, etc., etc. At Red Devil Shizzy, who is more essential, KDB or Vardy? FPL Vader asks, Fernandes or KDB, Kane or Vardy? So we've had a lot of questions around all the premium options, all the expensive options in midfield and attack. So for our YouTube viewers, we now have a graphic from our OptaStats tool showing midfielders and forwards 6 million and above ranked by expected points over the past 4 game weeks. This shows Jamie Vardy right at the top on 31.7 expected points, Bamford second on 30.1, then Grealish, Fernandes, Jota, Salah, De Bruyne, Mane. A lot of very, very expensive options in there. So, Adam, the question to you is, how do we pick out which expensive players we can afford and the ones that we need in our team? What are your thoughts?
It's really tough, isn't it? And I think it's the one question that's really got me this season, because like you've mentioned, there's reasons to pick pretty much all of the players that you've mentioned. So if we start with the Spurs players, Kane and Son, I think Kane's stats have dropped a little bit, particularly the XG side in the last 4. But I don't think he's not blanked, has he, since game week 1? Is that I think that's right? And he's finding a way to get points. So he's hard to drop. And but I suppose the only caveat that I would say is that that he's unlikely to continue the level of getting points. I think it will slow down, and the fixtures are tough. I think Son, could he suit this counter? The Spurs have obviously got Chelsea, Liverpool, Arsenal. Could be some opportunities to counter-attack. Kane dropping deep and playing him in. So Son, as you mentioned, could offer us great value throughout the whole season. So I'm reluctant to get rid of him. And then you've got the ones that most people are talking about. Salah's back. KDB is coming into some incredible fixtures. Those that don't fancy KDB, the Sterling. You've then got Bruno. I think it's really, really difficult to pick. And I actually think it could, I think there's a huge, huge opportunity here to make some ground or go differential. I think the one player that I do really like and want to have in my team, I think, is Bruno, because I don't own him, and I've seen enough of him now to know that he's just a points machine. He finds a way of getting points, and Man United have to play him because they're such a different team without him. I think penalties, let's just face it, United are going to get a load of penalties. Deserve it or not, doesn't matter. They'll get a load of penalties. So I think Bruno is probably the one that I like the most. And I think because of fixtures, I think a few people that have bought him may consider selling him for Salah, De Bruyne, and I have seen murmurs of that. An interesting stat that I like with Bruno, he's played 10 away games. I think he's got 10 goals, 6 assists. Incredible. That's just him. And he's got 24 returns in 22 games for Man United. I think we've seen enough to realise he's the real deal in FPL. And I think even if the stats aren't quite there, he'll find a way to get points. So I really like Bruno. City haven't quite got going yet, but it's hard to argue against the fixtures. And as we're talking off air with KDB, he's going to get returns in those fixtures. You would think, but then it's quite feasible that if they're 2-0 up, he gets taken off and rested for the last 30 minutes. So I'm not as hot on KDB as I am on Bruno, because I think every time United score, you just got a feeling he's gonna be involved, and you're not gonna have to worry about him starting as well or getting the odd rest. I think Salah coming back is interesting. I mean, I think probably just to pass it over to you on this, because we've meant, and we can go back and talk about Bruno and KDB in a minute, but I think that Liverpool are a really interesting team to discuss, not just Salah, but Jota, Mane as well. What are your thoughts about them? Because their fixtures are actually pretty good.
Yeah. So I'm very much a player. An FPL manager who tries to look for value, which works at times and does on others, right? But I kind of look at it. So I've got Robertson. Obviously, I'm really happy with Robertson, especially now. I've held on to him all this time, and I'm probably thinking about bringing in Jota. I haven't had Salah all season. I'm not really interested in having Salah all season. I haven't been interested in having Salah all season. Obviously, after game week 1, when I didn't own him, that was a bit of a kick in the teeth to start off with like a 5 million rank, right? But other than that, I think that Jota for value, he's going to start, surely. He's been in absolutely scintillating form.
I agree, yeah.
And I think that, obviously, while Salah and Jota, for example, is a really good double up, I think there are so many other options elsewhere. You've mentioned Son, Bruno. You can't have everyone, right? I think that Jota can match Salah for value. Now, I don't think you can match him for points. I think that Salah will always be the premium option in points. But let's just say, for example, over the next 7 or 8 games, I like to look at games in blocks. Right? I think the short-term thinking of one game week all the time doesn't help matters when you're trying to analyze a kind of rank over a period of time. And I think that if Salah scores, let's say he scores 50 points in the next 8 games, if he scores 50 points, it means Liverpool are scoring goals, right? And if Liverpool are scoring goals, then Jota is likely to be involved as well. So I think, and this is my thinking with Son and Kane as well a little bit. So if Salah scores 50 points, Jota scores 35 to 40, I think for those 15 points, you can put the 6 million elsewhere. The only caveat to that is the captaincy option in game week 12 against Fulham. But again, I don't want to base my whole team around one captaincy in one game week, because he could blank or someone else could score as many as him as well. So I think because there are alternatives to Salah for a much cheaper price in that Liverpool team, if you look at Robertson and Jota over this run, I expect them to perform very well. And combined, they cost roughly the same as Salah, right? Now, is it fair to say you think that Robertson and Jota combined over the next 4 will outscore one person in Salah? I'd say they probably would. I don't know what you think about that.
I think that's a fair comment. Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that. Would you said about captaincy?
Yeah.
So let's look at that Fulham game. Would you look to bring in Salah or Mane, or would you trust Jota with the captaincy, or even look out elsewhere?
I'd look elsewhere. If there were, other really good options, I would look elsewhere, but I wouldn't have anything with putting it on, on Jota that week. And this is the thing, right? So if Liverpool go out and score 3, 4, 5 goals, the odds on Jota is going to be involved as well. So it's not like, Salah has banged in a hat-trick and Jota will get nothing. I find that incredibly unlikely. My thoughts on that?
I think another way to look at Jota, if they were, and this is a really good way of thinking of things now, because value can get in the way of decisions, I think. Because sometimes you could look at Jota and think he's too cheap. I don't know if in the sense that
I agree.
It sort of, and in a way, so if FPL were repricing players now, what would Jota be? 9 million? Would that be?
I think that's
8.5, 9 million?
He'd be roughly with Son's sort of kind of level or price, or maybe 500,000 less, maybe. But I think you're right there, and we found that out with in the past with players like Kane and Mahrez when they had their breakthrough seasons. No one ever captained them, did they? Because of their price, nothing else. So.
Yeah, exactly. I think a few people might have done this, but I'll hold my hands up. I remember benching
I
Kane
did
versus
against Chelsea. I did exactly.
500, but the reason it was because if he was a 10 million player and he'd have been revalued for his season, I probably wouldn't have done it. It's mad, isn't it, how price can impact decisions? So I actually, we need to start thinking of Jota as a 9 million option, because that's really, or maybe a little bit less, but he is performing at that sort of level. And I think if he is cemented in the team, I think, he's definitely somebody worth looking at. What about then? So from Liverpool, you would go ultra cheap and go for Jota. I don't want to say cover, but he would be your person of preference from Liverpool.
Yes, definitely. And just a couple of other points on Jota, just while we're there, right? So we don't know really how Liverpool's attack is going to go forward with Jota in there as well.
Yeah.
Jota could take away Salah's points, right? He could offer more points to Firmino or Mane, for example. So Salah wasn't there on the weekend, and Firmino had the most shots he's had in a long time, right? So I don't think we can expect Salah to just still be the exact same Salah when Jota's on the pitch. Jota's a very greedy player as well, which is great for FPL. He shoots on sight. He's very, very quick. So I think that is just another thing to think about. I'm not saying take out Salah, right? I'm not saying don't go for Salah, but I do think that Jota, alongside everything else you get with that in terms of budget freed up, is a good alternative.
I just think Mr. A's just put in the chat about the combination of Jota and Salah or Mane. I agree. Double Liverpool midfield could be a really, really good move. In fact, I'll go a step further. I think a Liverpool triple up in these next few fixtures could be key, because Liverpool they're joint top. They're second on goal difference, aren't they? They're going to be going for the title, and I think they're going to probably go out to outscore teams as well. We've seen, they beat a very good Leicester side comfortably the weekend. So I don't think there were bad fixtures for Liverpool. I think they're capable of breaking down and scoring against anybody. So, and actually, you'd probably be more confident. And this is probably one of the big factors for me here, is that I'll be more confident in Salah and Jota having minutes than potentially picking the Man City player who's going to haul. So I can see the merits of that. Definitely the Liverpool double up. What about, we haven't talked about Chelsea yet. They're going pretty well. You've got Werner, haven't you? I'm not making that up, am I?
No, you're not. I'm actually thinking about taking him out. So I've held him, I think, since game week 1 actually. But I'll go into why in a bit. But their fixtures do turn now. I think Werner personally is a better option than Ziyech, as he proved on the weekend. He's got the penalties. He was so unlucky not to return, multiple returns as well. Their fixtures do shift a little bit now. So they're home to Spurs, then they've got Leeds, and they've got Everton, Wolves, West Ham and Arsenal. So they haven't got those easier games. This is going to be a real, this next 6 games for me is going to be a real test. I still think Werner and Ziyech are really good value.
The thing that puts me off Chelsea attack anyway at the moment is the rotation, because we've got 8 league games in about 30 days. Yeah. So it span end of November to start first week in January. You've then got League Cup, Champions. Is this the last time of the Champions League? But there's a lot of fixtures in there anyway. So Chelsea, last night you could see Frank using up all of his 5 changes. I think he seems to have settled on that 4-3-3. So that means there's only 3 spots for Ziyech, Abraham, Werner, Pulisic, potentially Havertz if he plays in there. So I think he's just going to manage the minutes and use his squad throughout December. And that makes me a little bit nervous. And I think the other factor with Chelsea is they're looking very good attack-wise. And, I do think they could offer value. But I would worry about... would you captain them as well? Because have they got any fixtures that jump out for captaincy in the near future? Probably not. Where I do think Chelsea could be good, though, is defensively. I think they've looked exceptional with Thiago Silva, with Mendy in goal. So, I think you've got double. I'm almost like praising your team too much here.
I'm loving it. I'm loving it. Everything
Literally,
you're saying.
Get Robertson. You've got go invest in Chelsea defence. I need to calm down a little bit. But I do think Chelsea defence could be good to look at. But I do sort of agree with you. I thought Werner was. I mean, another one really unlucky not to haul versus Newcastle.
He was.
And I think it's probably kicking the teeth when he got taken off after his goals ruled out by VAR.
And then he played last night as well. Then I think they're good value. I'm thinking of taking him out. I normally wouldn't, but I have got a plan which we'll talk about when we get to our teams. I think a thing I would like to say is I think you need to work out which 2 or 3 premiums you can't live without, right? What are your 2 or 3? So if I say mine, for example, mine are Fernandes, because, as you just said, I've had him since game week 1. I will have him all season, bar injury. My other one generally is KDB. Okay, I'm kind of a little bit wavery, but I do think these next games, they've got to go and win these games. They absolutely have to, right? So I think he's another one. My third one is Son. And again, it's for kind of value sort of purposes. And if you look at Spurs' run now, so the next few games, they've got Chelsea, Arsenal, Palace, Liverpool, Leicester and Wolves, right? They've got some really hard games. Now I fancy, as I mentioned last week, Son tends to get more points against the better teams who leave space in behind than Kane. Kane's a bully. Kane will... he tends to sit deeper against these teams. He'll still get points, right? He'll still get the odd assist. You get the odd goal. I personally can't see Kane scoring 2 or 3 against any of these teams. Whereas Son's 1 goal is worth 11 points, right? If they have a clean sheet, I think this is where Son, Bruno, and KDB really come into their own. Is when they get the goal and get the clean sheet. 11 points compared to a lot of the time when Kane scores, Vardy scores, they only end up on 6 points, right? So I think there's so much value up front.
Well, I think when we were speaking prior to coming on air, one of the points you made is you really fancy the midfielders in the premium bracket. So if you were going to go, because Son is a little bit cheaper in terms, he's below 10 million. So if you were looking at 10 million plus to have throughout the whole December period, and I'm giving you another wild card because you wasted your other one earlier. So who would you go for?
One, I didn't waste it, but I would actually go for Bruno, KDB, and Son. And the reason for that is because
and then spread the funds.
I want to spread the funds, and I want 13, 14 playing players over this period. So we'll look at my team in a bit. But that's my plan, right? So I'm going to move to, something along the lines of Bamford and Calvert-Lewin and Watkins up front, have, a really good midfield 5 and have 3 or 4 really good defenders in there as well. And that's my plan. There's a big risk right not having Salah. But...
So I'll actually answer the question and give you 10 million plus players that I would go for.
Go on, you do it.
I think we've said Bruno. I think we're unanimous on that. He's just the gift that keeps on giving, and he always gets 2 tries at penalties. So yeah, it's a bit of a no-brainer. I think Salah for me, and I never thought I would say this, and I'll tell you, I think I would. I'm very tempted to double up or treble up at Liverpool as soon as I can. But what I like about Salah is I think he's probably had his break with everything that's gone on. I think he'll play, and he's so selfish. And the penalty thing is such a huge thing. It's something I completely underestimated. He's got 4 goals in open play this season. That says it all. But he's got 8 already. So I think I would go Bruno, Salah. The third one's really tough, and it would be between De Bruyne or Vardy, and. I think you've made a compelling case for De Bruyne. I think I would probably go for Salah, Bruno, De Bruyne would be the 3 that I would go for. I think your argument on the midfielders is right.
So James Harding asks in the chat, I think for most people it boils down to Salah versus KDB to bring. So it sounds like your Salah above KDB by the sound of it. If you just had a direct choice.
Okay, so another thing to mention, and this could change, but last season City were a different animal. They were consistent. I don't think they haven't averaged next year of above 2. I don't think for a long period of time. And KDB was absolutely bossing. Same with Trent. They were bossing the expected assist charts. There was nobody else in sight of them. When you look at it this season, I think KDB is about 4th or 5th. He's quite far down now. He might improve as things go on, but I don't think his numbers are at the same level as they were last season. Plus, he was 9.5 million. He was like the Son equivalent at the start of last season, whereas now he's big boy prices. And I think what I would say with KDB, if you're gonna captain him, go for it. Yeah. That is a no-brainer. And if you believe in City, and they've got really, really good fixtures, and if you believe in City, go for it. What I would say though is, from my perspective, and why I would be tempted to go away from them, is with Salah, with Bruno, they've been proving it this season. They've been, we know both are guaranteed on penalties. KDB might lose them to Aguero. We don't know. We haven't had that confirmed yet. And I just think with Liverpool, their fixtures are really, really good. It's just the only reason people aren't looking at them is just Cities are just even better. But Liverpool could, they've got Fulham. I even think the Wolves game they could win comfortably, considering what they did to Leicester. And they got a lovely run over December. So yeah, I'm going to go Salah over KDB.
Okay, well, I'm the opposite. I'm KDB over Salah. So that's put that to bed then. We did just have a quick question in the chat around Sterling. So FPL Geordie, thoughts on Sterling? Great fixtures start this game week. I think on Sterling, he hasn't done it yet this season. For me, Sterling seems to perform well when he's had a rest. He normally performs well right at the start of the season. After restart, for example, as well, he played really, really well. But against these teams that are going to block defend as well, he's not going to have any real chance to use his pace and getting behind, which is another reason why I like De Bruyne as well, because De Bruyne is just going to be picking the ball up on the edge of the area all game, right, and just swinging in balls, having shots. What do you think?
Do you not think he'll be motivated to get his England place back, or having lost it to Grealish? Do you not think he'll be? Grealish is understudy.
Yeah, no, I think I don't think it suits Sterling. I think Sterling's I wouldn't captain Sterling. I suppose that's the key point for me here. And when you're looking at your premiums, is would you captain him? So I would captain Bruno as I did last week. I would captain Son as I did the week before, and I would captain De Bruyne. I would obviously captain Salah as well, right? But
I think Sterling's quite streaky. I've always found.
Yeah.
And he can go through. He had a spell, didn't he, post-COVID, after the restart, where he had like 3 or 4 game weeks where there were a couple of really, really high scores in there.
Yeah, he was unplayable, wasn't he, for a while?
He was unplayable. The problem I find with him this season, looking at the stats, he's not anywhere near the top in a lot of the key metrics. So that puts me off, and he's very expensive.
He is
so
expensive.
I think there's better. I think there's better options for cheaper, personally.
Agree. Let's just have a quick look at the Fantasy Football Hub's predicted points of the next 6 games. Salah is predicted to score the most points combined over the next 6 games. De Bruyne is 2nd, Sterling is 3rd, Mane is 4th, and Aubameyang. This is the point last week where I had cramp when I said Aubameyang in the predicted points. He's actually, with the fixtures that they have, he's actually 5th here. But it does kind of back up the whole Salah versus De Bruyne versus Sterling argument. And we haven't really mentioned Mane, who I think he's been looking dangerous. He just hasn't quite got the returns, has he?
Yeah, I was a frustrated Mane owner on Sunday night. I thought he looked good, and I thought he could have scored. And the one he should have scored is, and you really fancied him, is when he went through and you thought he had the opportunity to bend it in the top corner.
100%.
And the amount of times I've seen him do that.
Yeah.
But obviously, because he was in my team and not many other people's, he thought, you know what, let's give Kasper Schmeichel. But that's what I think went through his head, But yeah, it was, and then he had a few chances. I think Mane is a good option. The penalties swing me now towards Salah because there's been a lot more than I anticipated, and I think they'll score fairly similar, excluding pens. So I'd go Salah.
So just to wrap up this section, then the three that you would pick are Fernandes, Salah, and KDB, and my three would be Fernandes, KDB, and Son, and I would spread those funds elsewhere. I think that's kind of wrapped up that's probably a fair assessment of where we are. Okay, so next then we're going to move on to Adam's chosen topic. If you don't follow Adam Hopcroft, please do a Hopcroft13. So every week he will put out a couple of options for topics, and then the followers choose. So this week they chose how to recover from a bad start. Adam, over to you.
Yeah, so I suppose the reason this is a subject after my own heart at the moment, because in my opinion, I've not had the greatest starts. I'm around the million rank, which I don't think is disastrous, but it's below where I would want to be. We also looked at a few of I think just to call out a couple of one of our fellow Hub podcast, I think, Who Got the Assist. I think they did a really good podcast on sort of the luck versus skill element, and I think that was the other topic that people were considering. So listen to them. It's I enjoyed that anyway, listening to how lucky Bruno owners were this week. But anyway, I digress. So what we're going to go through how to turn around a poor start to the season. I'm interested in your thoughts there, Fergie, because I feel at the moment, and this just could be because of the array of options available, but I think when we've had a couple of red arrows, I think the game is harder to play.
Right.
I think it's really easy. I think when you've got a good rank and everything is going well, this game is actually really easy. You make the obvious decisions, and 9 times out of 10, they seem to pay off. Or because you're quite high up, you don't get a huge dip in rankings. So I'm keen to get your thoughts and tips here, because I could do with some, because I want to be coming into next week with a green arrow for the podcast. So
I just realised that you're really, really fortunate, because our subscribe button is actually hiding the red arrow on the screen. So I'm going to have to fix that for next week. So I think the first things, I know a lot of these sound quite obvious, and they're probably a lot harder to actually do. To actually execute. But I think the first thing, and I did this last season, right? So last season, I had 4 or 5 really good seasons on the trot. Last year I had a nightmare. And what I did, I just kept on panicking and chasing hauls week after week. I kept jumping onto the next big thing, the next big captaincy for the next week. And I think an example for that, for next week, for example, now for game week 10 is Vardy. So, if you've got Vardy in, I think Vardy is a great option. We'll talk about captaincy later. And I actually think that Vardy is a good pick for the next 3. But if you're just bringing in Vardy just to jump on the next big thing, I think it's the wrong thing to do, because there are multiple other options there as well. And I think you should try and look at the weak points in your team and fix the weak points instead of trying to catch the hauls all the time. Catching a haul, as we all know, is bloody difficult. It's very hard to catch the right haul. Whereas if you're constantly just putting out the fire in your team, because all our teams have fires, right? Especially over this period now in December, what you don't want to have are all the potential superstars, them not hauling for captaincy, and the rest of your team is an absolute bloody mess as well. So I think that's my first point. Don't go chasing haul every week. Don't go chasing the best captaincy option every single week, unless they're naturally in your team or they've got a really nice run of fixtures. So I'd use De Bruyne this week as an example. I'm probably bringing De Bruyne this week. I'm not bringing him in just to captain. I'm bringing him in because they've got a really nice run of games. So that's the first point. I think another one. So probably a lot of our watchers and listeners are on Twitter, and I would ignore others' successes. I think it's So I think it really, and I did this again last year. So I speak from experience from last year. All the things which I did to try and fix my season, to try and get back onto green arrows, they just lead you down a red arrow path. And looking on Twitter, everyone, yes, I've captained so and so. I've got 70 points. Oh, is 70 a good score when you're sat on 32, right? And I've only scored 65 this week. Oh, what a bummer! And you're sat on 40 or whatever it is just ignore that, because that will force you into moves you don't want to make. You end up looking at their team. Oh, they got this, they've got that, right? But I think that's another one. And kind of going hand in hand with it as well, it's limit hits. So end of last season, I was so determined to have a really good finish to game week 38 that I took out Kevin De Bruyne for a hit to get in whoever it was, Sterling, right? Because I was so convinced that Sterling was chasing the golden boot, Had I not have done it, I'd have finished off with 175k better rank than what I had, because I was chasing the next big thing for a hit as well. So that's a kind of start off for me there, Adam. What do you think?
I think there's some good things in there. I want to give a couple of shout outs to hub contributors. So Jossie, who is usually the richest man, he might be rich, I don't know, but in FPL terms, he's incredibly good with his team value. So he has recently gone on a journey from being around I think it was the 2.3 million mark to 800k. And he said what's paid off for him is making the obvious, sensible moves. So if the players he's brought in, he's defined as being fairly template. He's not been trying to seek an edge or look for, like you said, the next big thing. He's not trying to overcomplicate things. I think FPL Fairy's done something fairly similar. So he's gone from 2.5 million to 1 million. So I think it can be done. I think last season, and I think this is probably the best example I could think of, because I haven't had too many absolute disasters. I've always had a part of a season which hasn't gone to plan. But last season, it took me, I think I was about 300,000 pre-COVID, pre-lockdown and all of that. And I ended up finishing 15k. And the reason I think for that was that I think there's opportunities to have really high ceiling weeks. And I think I took them quite well. I think the first one was the bench boost I used in game week 30. And the thing that I've learned over the years is everybody, and I think this is probably for a bit later on, but everybody always maxes out on double game week players. Whereas the key lesson and the key learn that comes out all of the time is, have your double game week players, but then balance it out with some really good single week game week players. And I ended up having like probably my best ever game week as a consequence that accelerated me up. So I think learning from lessons from previous seasons is really, really good. I think patience, I think it's been put in the chat, I think, by one of the guys, which I think there's always a sense that it's probably the exact point that you've made, which is worded a bit different, but there's always a sense to try and chase and to try and think, well, I'm doing badly. I've got to rip down the houses and do something really different to get an edge. Whereas the reality is, let other people do that. I mean, you've talked about, I don't want to ruin your moves, but you've talked about an 8-point hit. I don't care what the moves are. It's a great move. I think everybody should take 8-point hits this week, and it'll guarantee, go for it. Go. Why stop there? Go 12-point hits. But I think that there's a tendency to try too hard, and I think doing the obvious moves. You've got to remember, there's 7 million people that play the game. What looks like the obvious move, what looks like the in vogue move on Twitter, isn't what everybody is doing. Not everybody. So a really good example of this, Bruno captain last week. It was for Salah owners. I wish I owned Salah. I would have made the exact same move. I didn't. But for Salah owners, it was an obvious move. It was it was. And I'm not even playing captain hindsight, but it was, you're replacing them with a big hitter that's got West Brom at home. And I think there can be a tendency to try too hard, like Captain Grealish or, whatever it would be. But it was a really, really obvious move. I don't think you should be afraid of them or get called, don't worry about getting called sheep, template, or any of those sorts of things.
How can you be a sheep for picking the best captaincy option of the week? In every prediction tool, in every metric, Bruno last week, I don't care what anyone says, was the best captaincy option last week, and he was unlucky not to mega haul. So anyone who rags out that decision, to me,
the Welshman getting defensive when sheep
is incorrect. Like you, Adam, is incorrect. I just
exactly. I think that's the whole Twitter thing, isn't it? And the whole herd mentality. I think not playing it safe, but trying to do the obvious moves is a good thing to do. Thinking longer term as well. I'm trying to think of other things that have worked.
So I've got another one, and I'll use my own team now as an example. So I've kept faith with Robertson all the way through, because Robertson is a proven FPL player, fantastic asset. It hasn't worked for much of the season. Obviously, it worked last week. I didn't really expect it to work last week, but I think as well, now that I've got him in now, it saved me a transfer as well, and people are now looking to transfer in Robertson when I've already got him, if that makes sense. Again, I'm guilty, and this is what happens if you hop about trying to catch last week's points as an example. And another one for me now. So I've had Bruno in. I said at the start of the season he didn't perform. Everyone was, you shouldn't have Bruno, to waste of money. All of a sudden he is he's essential. Apparently, because over time it's going to happen. And this is why I'm so big on KDB now, is because he's probably one of the, if not the most proven FPL asset. And if it comes to 2 or 3 weeks down the line, you're struggling to get him in, can't afford to get him in, you'll be taking hits. People already got his points. So this to me is why he is another one. So I think these proven assets, don't take them out if they blank after a couple of weeks. I think that's another one for me.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I mean, I'm tempted. I really want the fixtures to be announced for December and January, because I think one thing that has been different this season, I feel it's held me back, is the whole wildcard situation. I'm not comfortable, and I'm trying to. I'm going to hold out now, but I'm the person who wildcards fairly early, so usually game week 3 to 6. Never. This is the first time I can remember holding on to my wildcard, and it's making me a bit uneasy and a bit on edge when I'm playing, and I'm desperate for these fixtures to come out, because I think as soon as they're released, I can wildcard. And because I think then I'll be looking at the bench boost for having the right goalkeeper set up, for having all of those things. So I think that will definitely definitely help me. You made a good point earlier, I think, on the on midfielders and strikers. I think there could be, if I was wildcarding now, I think I would go Salah, De Bruyne, and Bruno. Probably Jota as check. I've got enough spaces first. Jota and Son maybe, if we can get all those in. But I would probably go with quite a heavy midfield, because I think the strikers are performing. I think we had this last season, so this is again something that was evident post-lockdown. A lot of people went 3-5-2 because the midfielders returned, but the value strikers, the likes of Ings, Jimenez, Antonio last season, were performing. And I think you got Bamford, Watkins, I would trust with the fixtures. Antonio's going to be back soon. Calvert-Lewin. I think Jimenez is somebody you can trust, because he will get points throughout the course of the season. So there's plenty of cheaper or non-premium options out there. Tammy Abraham, somebody no one very rarely gets mentioned.
Keeps his place, yeah, definitely.
But with him, even if he doesn't start, he could come on and score. And given the amount of matches Chelsea have, he could get similar minutes to Timo Werner. It's quite feasible, and he's looked as good as Timo, in my opinion, in terms of. I think he's looked fairly decent. So, I think getting a structure you're happy with is definitely something worth considering as well. Is there anything else that you've got to add?
I think they're the main ones. I also think that no one's essential. So this is the thing with Salah, right? So it's been quite hard. Obviously I write articles on the Hub and I come on the various, the podcasts and things and chat around how I don't think Salah's worth the money, right? But according to everyone else, if they don't have Salah, then they haven't got a team to a lot of people. I just don't think that's right. I think you get your points. Okay, if someone scores a hat trick, right? It was exaggerated in game week 1 because he scored a hat trick. I missed out there, right? Missed out on 40 odd points. Hands up on that one, right? How many hat tricks he's going to score over the season, right? And I think if you can have a really balanced, well-rounded team, if you can pick a captain who can return each week, it just, even if it's 6, 7, 8, 9 points, you may get lucky and have a 13 points or a 15 or whatever else. But if you've got a nicely rounded team, plan ahead, I think, is the other one as well. Like look at the fixtures now, right? So this is why I'm kind of moving away from Chelsea now and looking at Man City as well, just because Chelsea are playing well. The next few fixtures they've got are quite tough. I think home to Leeds, they'll probably score a couple, but they're not going to hammer Spurs. They're not going to hammer Wolves. They're not going to hammer everyone else they're playing as well, right? Whereas City's fixtures now turn. So I think look kind of 6 or 8 weeks in advance and start to think about your moves now that you want to make to get your team in place. So then when it comes to that point, you're not then chasing the next big thing. You're actually looking at putting out the fires, like I mentioned earlier. So I think that's just kind of to summarize there. I think we're both agreeing, just stay patient, not go mad, I think is
the only other thing I would add, and I've mentioned this before and I'm a big believer on it, is decision making process and the times you make decisions. I think Saturday night, for anyone that didn't know Bruno, it could have led to quite a few reactions. I'm not saying it would have been a bad transfer to bring in, but I think you can panic straight after a bad game week. I think stepping away from FPL is a good thing in general for a short period of time and reflecting and then calming yourself down so you make logical, not emotional decisions. Because it's very easy to make emotional decisions. I think most of us have, made rage transfers. I definitely have.
I just would make an early. I don't see the point now, genuinely, of making any early transfers unless you've got the exact money, and if you don't do it, then you're going to lose it on the move.
And you're 100% set on the player. And you're 100%
set. I wouldn't even bother. There's so many cheap options. Look at the ones you mentioned earlier, right? We've now got Bamford, Calvert-Lewin, Watkins, Grealish, Jota, all these players, like top players who are underpriced, right? They are underpriced for how they're performing. It means you can just get anyone you want, right? Nearly in your team. Obviously you can't have Salah, KDB, or Bam, all the premiums. You can easily afford 3 and have a really good team still. So I don't understand why people.
Aubameyang's fell off a cliff, hasn't he? God, if you we haven't even. Every time you mention him, we get an injury.
Just
don't
laugh.
We? So,
yeah, either get cramp or we laugh.
They are so bad, Arsenal. It's hilarious.
It is.
Oh, sorry, Arsenal fans. But going forwards, they've got nothing. They've got absolutely no creativity whatsoever. So good one to put in if you want to get a clean sheet. Who's got Arsenal this week?
Good question. I haven't got it to hand. Arsenal have got. I'm not sure.
That's the thing. We don't even care about Arsenal.
We don't even care.
Arsenal at the moment are FPL irrelevant, and then I know I'll get loads. I don't know. Actually, it's usually Liverpool or United where I get loads of stick if we're. But I'm sure Arsenal fans will agree. I do actually like Arteta, but it's just the creativity's not there at the moment.
It's just not options anyway. I did think Saka was decent. I think if Arsenal's,
he looked good for England as well, didn't he?
I think when Arsenal's fixtures change, they can show they can score a couple of goals. Assuming he's still roughly kind of 5.5 million, he could be one to get in. So we've now got your team up on screen, Adam. If you could read it out for our podcast listeners and let us know your thoughts for the coming game week.
Yeah, okay. So I've got McCarthy in goal, the legend that got a 7-pointer without a clean sheet. I've got James Justin, who I think should keep his place for Fulham at home, even with Pereira in the wings. I've got Chilwell, and who else have I got? I'm going to play Matt Target, I think, away at West Ham.
Yeah.
In midfield, I have Rashford, Son, Mane, and Grealish, and then up front I've got Kane, Calvert-Lewin, and Bamford. I don't really know what to do this week, if I'm being honest, because I think I should. There was an option to wildcard last week, and I think this whenever wildcard, I want it to be a proactive wildcard. It would have been last week. I think it'll be reactive this week, so I'm not going to do it. What my gut says at the moment, Vardy looks great on paper, but I'm tempted at some point to put more money into midfield. So it could end up just being a 1 week punt, and then because ultimately I might want to get Salah and KDB in midfield at some point. So what I'm thinking about is the one player I do want is Bruno. So I could do Rashford to Bruno. Rashford is I'm not going to be owning him for past this game week. So I think Rashford to Bruno is probably what I'm thinking at the moment. The alternative is I could do Rashford to KDB and Kane to Vardy, which that sounds fairly appealing. But I think it could be a good week to captain Bruno. So his away record is incredible. It's just like that, and he's got 5 goals in his last 3 games. He looks brilliant at the moment. So I'm tempted to bring Bruno in for Rashford and captain him, because I don't think many people will captain him this week.
I think they will, but I personally think they will, but only because he scored those couple of goals last night against. I was just surprised at the reaction last night, because everyone was, the kind of reaction is like, oh, Bruno, he's my captain now. If he'd have done it against top European team, I'd kind of understand it, but it was an absolute walk in the park. Now I don't really understand the reaction, but I think it
was an easy game, but and actually last night has had absolutely zero bearing on it. In fact, actually it's probably been more negative because he gave the penalty to Rashford. Rashford, I'm thinking, will that happen in the league? And then, no, my luck, it will happen this weekend. So the only thing I would say with Bruno, and I said this quite a while back, I think holding him is great because he will constantly get returns, but predicting his hauls is quite hard, I find. Maybe because he's got a lot of them away from home, which that's the big problem with captaincy. It's about predicting a haul, isn't it? You're not looking over a 4 or 5 game week period, and so that puts me off a little bit with Bruno. But I think I'm likely to do that move. The other captain options, Calvert-Lewin, and I think the thing putting me off of that is my bad experience captaining Grealish. Am I going for a non-premium player?
Only in price, not in form.
No, but I think the big difference is Everton are they're not a top 4 or 5 club, are they? That's where Liverpool are with Jota. That was I think with Calvin Phillips back, Leeds will be better defensively. So Calvert-Lewin could be a good shout.
We'll touch.
What would you do if you had my team other than wildcard? What would you do?
I would. That's a really good question. I don't think you need Kane and Son. I think is the first thing. I said this a couple of weeks ago. I don't think you need them both because they both tend to be involved in the goals. This is my point earlier around Jota and Salah. I don't think you need them both, especially with the fixtures the way they are. I think that Kane becomes a really good option again. I think it's game week 16, I want to say. Their fixtures really, really turn, nice. I think, a double up then is really, really valid. But I think if you're thinking of Vardy for the longer term, in terms of the next month or so, I think Kane to Vardy and Vardy as captain is probably, a really really good shout. I would leave Mane at Brighton. Rashford to Bruno is probably my second pick, but I think if you fancy Vardy, I would go Kane to Vardy as captain. If you want him for kind of longer term, or maybe do both moves for a hit or whatever.
Yeah, that's crossed my mind. The thing that puts me off Vardy is with the amount of games coming up. Last season in December, he ended up missing a couple.
Yeah, he did.
And the problem with Brendan Rodgers, the news is usually a bit sketchy, and then you find out from the media, a half an hour before or whatever. So he was hobbling a bit around Liverpool as well. So I'll maybe wait to Friday on Vardy. I do agree. I understand about this getting rid of the Spurs double up. It probably would be a sensible thing to do.
Moritz Ball in the chat says, if I had your team, Adam, I would take a -44. We'll move on before Adam.
Don't think it's that bad.
No, so we've now got my team up. So I've got Martinez in goals. I've got Creswell, Robertson, Reece James, and Chilwell as a back four at the moment. I've got Foden, so that's my real dilemma. I've got Son and Fernandes. And I then got Watkins, Calvert-Lewin, and Werner. So I think I had a really good week last week. Scored 88 points, and I think actually I was quite unlucky on Werner. I think I was unlucky on Watkins, who had the ball in his hands for the penalty.
Don't go there. Don't go there.
And I think I was quite unlucky on Bruno as well. But I know it's very much a divided opinion here. But he could have had a massive, massive haul. I think I've got a decent team there. I haven't got any Liverpool attack, and I've only got Foden from the Man City attack. But I haven't taken a hit all season, but I'm planning my first hit, and it's because this for me, and I think we talked about this about a month or so ago, was game week 10 looks like a really good time for me for like wildcard time because of these massive fixture swings for lots of teams, particularly Man City. Jappe778 said Adam's team much better. Well, each to their own, Jappe.
No, thanks. That's good. That's good. Got a little bit of support.
You got a little bit of support me on this bit. But I'm actually thinking. So I have got 5 million sat there waiting to be spent. Actually, because I made a move last week. I can't remember the move I made actually, but I took out Kane for Calvert-Lewin last week, which gave me a bit of change. What I'm thinking of doing, I'm thinking of taking out Werner, which may sound a bit mad, but bear with me because I do think he's a great option, right? However, I can do Werner, Podence, and Burke, right? So I can do those three. 2, Bamford, who I think could match Werner's output over the coming weeks. Kevin De Bruyne, and Diogo Jota. So that would be the -8. Now that is very much spreading my funds. But like I said, I said a few weeks ago, and we're nearly in this period now, right, where we're going to have these lots of games. There will be random benchings. There will be injuries. There will be COVID issues. And having a rounded team for me at the moment is really, really important. So the only person then I would have in my team, only outfield player, would be Mitchell, who's actually fit, right? So he's not starting. But I quite like that team. It means I can keep Robertson. It means I've got a very, very good defence. It means I would have a midfield 5 of Foden, Son, Bruno, KDB and Jota, and a forward 3 of Watkins, Calvert-Lewin and Bamford. The only question is the -8.
Well, I've got another question for you.
Go on.
How are you going to, because you've got a real, I like the squad you'll have. How are you going to decide who to not start or who to bench each week? Well, that is going to be a bit of a dilemma.
It is. So, as you mentioned earlier, the fixtures for Chelsea are not the best, so I don't really mind benching James each week. He's only 5 million. And
no, I meant your attackers more than anything.
Sorry, yeah. So
I'm assuming you'll start 7 attackers. So who would you bench?
I think my bench for this week would maybe be, it's either Foden, which seems so stupid because I've held him all season for this run, but it'd either be Foden or Watkins, because I obviously wouldn't bench Son, Bruno, KDB, Calvert-Lewin,
I think if you're genuinely considering benching Foden this week, Foden to Jota is the move to make.
No chance. I'm not getting rid of Foden ahead of this run. I've held, and this, and this is my question. Am I just being stubborn out for stubborn's sake? But I look at the run that they've got.
Yeah.
And it is insane. And I don't mind having him on the bench because his ownership is quite low, right? If he does well in the next week, even if I bench him or not, right? If he does well, if he starts and does well, people will be clamouring to get him in for the following week. Whereas, again, this is my point. I will already have him, and I'll be one step ahead again. But I take your point, and I've got a lot of thought to put into this with Foden. But my argument for him is he's only 6.5 million. He is. I don't mind kind of putting that money to the side almost, but just having him there for when it happens for him, which I'm sure it will. He can't not keep not playing him, right?
Yeah.
And these fixtures are so good, and he can also score off the bench as well, right? In this run. So just FPL Geordie there said, will he get the minutes though? And this is the obvious thing, right? This is the big question. I think he has. So he has to get minutes, right? I think these run of fixtures, they've got a run of games in December where they play 6 times in 4 weeks. He's not going to not play, right? He's going to play a couple of them, and he's good enough, as he's proved again this evening, as he's proved previously in the Champions League, as he's proved for England. He can score goals, right? And for 6.5 million sitting on my bench, I'm just happy to have him there. I would rather him there than Burke, just as an example, if you know what I mean.
Have you got a -4 move?
Yeah, my -4 move was just Werner and Potence out for KDB and Bamford, so it wasn't the Burke to Jota, but I want Jota in, and because if I don't, right, it means I'll be wanting to get in Jota next week, so I'm already booking in transfers. If that makes sense, instead of staying ahead of the curve almost. So I'm not decided yet, right? And it could be, as happens a lot of this time, an injury or something may kind of make the decision for me. But I've got some thinking time still. But I haven't taken any hits all season, and I'm seeing this as a bit of a mini wild card to set myself up very, very nicely for the next 4 weeks.
I think treat yourself to a hit.
I'm sure you do, because you want to see that.
How many points ahead of you? How many points ahead of me?
Not much. It's only about 20
8
or something. That
narrows down the lead.
No,
that narrows it down. Yeah, go for a 12-point hit. Why not?
No. I think like I say, and another thing I'm doing this season, what I didn't do last season, was I'm following the way I want to play as well. So while I listen to everyone, I listen to the podcast. I listen to yourself. I read everything on Fantasy Football Hub and everything else. All that information just helps me make my mind up on what I want to do, which I didn't do last year. I just did what everyone else was doing. And
I think that I actually do think that's credit to you, because if you looked back at your wild card and you were adamant on certain players, Fernandes was one of them. The Liverpool double up and all of that, and I think on the whole, it's paid off for you because your loyalty to those players when those other people were ditching them, you stuck by them. So I think fair play on that.
We will see, right? We'll see what happens there. But they're my thoughts at the moment. Okay, so on to game week 10 captaincy now. And the 4 options which we've got on screen, we've got Bruno Fernandes, as we mentioned. We've got Jamie Vardy. We've got Kevin De Bruyne. And we've got Mohamed Salah. We did put up a poll on Fantasy Football Hub. And the poll read Vardy came out top with 43%. Second place was Salah with 23%. De Bruyne came out at 20%. And Fernandes, you are right, Adam, only came out at 12% of the vote. So in terms of these captains then, Adam, what are your thoughts? And are there any other options?
Yeah, I think there are other options. I think it's a difficult one. So I think De Bruyne appeals because City, he's been rested, hasn't he? He's had the week off.
Yeah, that's right.
So I think that's a huge plus for De Bruyne. I think you'd expect Leicester to score at least a couple past Fulham, and in which case you'd expect Vardy to be involved. Salah, if I remember correctly, did very well in the away match against Brighton not too long ago. So I think he could be honestly, it's a tough one. If I owned all four of those players, I think I'd go Vardy. I think so, yeah. I think psychologically as well, and this shouldn't impact it, but captaining a player early in the game week can ruin your weekend.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Yeah.
Vardy's playing on Monday, isn't he?
Yes.
So
I would just say,
yeah, I think that's a nice little plus point.
If you are thinking of bringing in Vardy, just hold on till the press conferences, because there were, he did kind of limp off at the end of the game last week. Haven't heard anything since, but
that's another thing that could happen, and I think this is again quite a key point with everything that's going on. The deadline's Friday. He's not playing till Monday. He could get COVID. There's so many things that could happen. We've known Vardy to get injuries as well, haven't we? At fairly short notice, so that probably puts me off a little bit as well. Yeah, it's a tough one.
Come on, hang your hat on one. Who is your captaincy pick for game week 10? No. I'm asking you, who's the best first, and then who are you going to captain?
Well, I don't own half of those, so that makes it a lot easier. So, do you know what? As things stand, I own none of any of them captaincy options. So
that says something.
Know what? Yeah, well, exactly. How many do you own of those for?
I own one. I'll be owning another by the weekend.
Yes, you own one.
I own one. Yeah, that's fair enough.
So between us, we own one out of a possible 8. Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. That's that'll help us get our listeners up.
It will. Indeed.
Yeah, exactly. Who do I think? Do you know what? I'm going to back Bruno.
Okay.
Well, nobody else. Well, only 14% back here. The reason I think is United they just look so much better away from home, and he's just key to everything they do. I think his performance against Everton, which has probably been forgotten by now, but he was brilliant in that game. So yeah, I'm going to go Bruno. I think that I would go Vardy, but I just don't have. I can just imagine a phantom injury or something coming up between Friday and Monday, and that puts me off a little bit. And I'd be so annoyed. Like the Zaha thing that happened this week, I'd be so annoyed if like Vardy then, Iheanacho's rocking up in the starting lineup. That would ruin my week probably. And I don't know if I could take that.
You'd have your vice on
Bruno.
Factor. You'd have your vice on Bruno, wouldn't you? So
yeah, that's true.
So I think out of those four, so I'm really this. I think this week for captaincy for me is one of the hardest, but I also think you can't really go. I wouldn't say you can't go wrong, right? But it's great to have so many really good options as well. Because you can likely expect quite a high scoring week, if that makes sense. At the moment, I am honestly thinking of captaining Calvert-Lewin, and that is because they're playing against a Leeds team. So when Everton have had Richarlison in the team this season, they have smashed teams, right? They didn't smash Fulham on the weekend, but they scored 3 on the weekend. They regularly score three a game when Richarlison and Calvert-Lewin are in the team. I know Leeds kept a clean sheet against Arsenal, but Arsenal, as we mentioned earlier, and I think there's a couple of Arsenal fans in the chat also said they're just absolutely awful. Leeds and Everton, I expect to actually be a bit of a goal fest, because Leeds struggle to defend and keep clean sheets, and Everton the same as well. And you've got two really, really formed players in Bamford and Calvert-Lewin, two very attacking teams. Neither of them is going to sit back. It's going to be blow for blow, break after break on both ends, and this is why I'm 10 for Calvert-Lewin. I'm purposely trying to again steer away from that price point, because if you price Calvert-Lewin now this minute against everyone else, he'd be up there as well, right? He'd be what, a 10 million striker? If we stopped FPL now and started from next week, he'd be a 10 million striker, wouldn't he? Right. So I'm trying to not get his price going the way. My second choice would be De Bruyne, who I still may captain. I captained Bruno last week. I don't fancy him this week, but Southampton have been playing very, very, very well, and they've kept a lot of clean sheets this season. So I'm just a bit concerned. He might get a return, right? But I fancy Calvert-Lewin more to get a return than I do for Bruno, just as an example. And the same for De Bruyne as well, right?
I don't think Calvert-Lewin has blanked when Richarlison has started.
This is it. So, even if he gets his goal, Calvert-Lewin, he's likely to get 8 points, right? But the form he's in, would you honestly be surprised if Calvert-Lewin didn't get a couple of goals at home to Leeds? And bear in mind, James plays much, much better at home than he does away as well. So his threat is going to be increased as well. So that's my reasoning.
That's not a bad shout. That's not a bad shout. You could have me tempted on that one.
We will see. I'm not desperate.
We'll see next week when I captain Grealish for Monday Night Football.
We'll see next week when I captained Calvert-Lewin. He got absolutely nothing, and Bruno and KDB and everyone absolutely smashed it. But we will.
He's I think he's a wide open captaincy this week.
It is massive. There's six options, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Which I think is which is exciting, and there is opportunity, but this is where it creates the big variance, and it's this because we're struggling to pick between the six of them or the ones that we've mentioned. So there is and there are going to be like fine margins in the decisions, may go to the wire, and that can make or break your game week. So we shall see.
And we haven't even mentioned Salah in there, either of us, in terms of when we really. I know neither of us own Salah, so maybe that's the reason why. But he's playing this evening. He hasn't scored yet. But he's got to be around there, right? Kind of in the conversation. Yeah, exactly. I think my only thing is, will he be up to speed? Because it does take players at times. I can't think of any player who's had COVID or has had this break to come back and really hit the ground running. So, but we will see. Obviously Salah is not a bad pick. I just prefer others this week. In terms of what our predicted tool says for the top point scorers for game week 10 only, top of the shop is Kevin De Bruyne. So the algorithm says that De Bruyne will be top. Second is Sterling, interestingly, even though none of us really fancied him earlier. Third is Vardy, fourth is Salah, and fifth is Mane. No Calvert-Lewin or Fernandes in sight in the top five, according to the Fantasy Football Hub prediction tool.
Oh dear.
Oh dear, we will see. We'll see.
Might have to revise all of our opinions.
Exactly. Okay, so competition time for our YouTube watchers. We will do this every week from now on for a chance to win a Fantasy Football Hub mug. They are fantastic quality. I think Adam's got yours as well. They are fantastic quality. We are selling these two along with other Hub merchandise in association with that FPL merch. There is a link in the description below, and we're currently running a 20% off discount using coupon code FFHub20. So if you do want to grab yourself a mug, or I think there's t-shirts and coasters and other things, head on there into the link. So for this competition and a chance to win one of these beautiful mugs, you just have to like the video, subscribe, and then comment on who you think will be the top FPL point scorer in game week 10. So it is limited to one entry each, and if there is a tie, we will do a random draw. Adam, who is your pick for the top FPL point scorer in game week 10?
Oh, it's the same as who I'd captain, isn't it?
I'm not sure. Well, it doesn't have to be.
Is it?
No. It can be a random.
Yeah, but surely I would captain the highest point scorer. Okay, let's go for someone a little bit different. I reckon. Do you know what? I'm going to go for something completely out there.
Go on.
I'm going to go for Aubameyang.
Wow, that is an interesting one.
Completely out there, yeah.
I am going to go for Harvey Barnes because I just think he's a great player, and I think, home to that Fulham team. If Vardy doesn't get the points, then he might. So everyone now in the chat, just make sure you make sure you subscribe, and just leave a comment of who you think will be the top point scorer in game week 10, and we will announce the winner next week. So finally, we're going to take a quick look at the top of our at FFH_Green Arrow mini league. In 10th place is actually in joint 9th place, Dan O'Connell and João Pexata. In 8th place, Ben Wyatt. 7th place, Michael Helen. 6th place, Will Hollin. 5th place, James Dayton. 4th place, Lou Banks. 3rd place, Noor Boujalea. 2nd, Ollie Rantala. And still first, he's having a hell of a season, Tony Scarpenhead on 660 points at a 68-point game week with his team Bojan Forever. So very, very well done there, Tony. If you haven't joined our May League, make sure you join. There will be a prize for first place, including a guest appearance on our first pre-season podcast of next season. The May League code is LV24ZG, or our YouTube watchers can join using the auto join link in the description below. So that is a wrap from us. Many thanks as usual to all our loyal watchers and listeners. Welcome to anyone who's watched or listened to us for the first time. We will be back now every Wednesday at 8 o'clock to do a live stream like this. We really, really do appreciate everyone's support and comments and likes and everything else. Adam, best of luck to you this weekend. Hopefully you can have a better weekend than last week.
Hopefully, yeah. I'd love to come on to it. I'd love a green arrow. That's all I want. It's not too much to ask.
Do you love how smug I am that I had a good week and you didn't? We've done our first live stream. I'm sure the tables will turn next week, and I'll just gloss over that then.
Yeah, we'll see, won't we? I'm not too optimistic at the moment, so we'll see.
Okay. Where can people get hold of you, Adam?
On Twitter, Hopcroft13.
Okay, and my Twitter handle is at Fergie222. So this podcast and video will be on the Fantasy Football Hub YouTube channel, with the podcast version available on all major podcast platforms. If you liked what you watched, please press the like button, and remember to subscribe to the channel in the bottom right hand corner of the screen. If you enjoyed your listen, please rate the podcast and leave a comment. Our handles on Twitter, Instagram and TikTok are at FFH_HQ. Excuse me, and our podcast Twitter handle is at FFH_Green Arrow. So make sure you give us a follow. Our website is fantasyfootballhub.co.uk, where you will find everything you need for fantasy football all under one roof, including player comparison tools, the fixture ticker, Opta-stats, top player team reveals, points prediction tools, and much, much more. To join the tens of thousands of other fantasy managers and sign up to the hub to use all our amazing resources, as we demoed a few of them today on the podcast, just click the top link in the description below. You will not regret it. Just as we finish up, Liverpool 0, Atlanta 1. They've just scored in the 60th minute. We'll be back next week previewing game week 11. See you then all. Stay safe and good night.